Serious. Employers, what's the most insane complaint you've had about an employee that turned out to be completely true? One of my current co-workers told me this story the other day. He used to be a manager at a fast food restaurant. He said that one night, after a busy rush, a woman called his store to complain that her fried food item had hair all over it. The manager denied this claim and assured the lady that the food items had never been in contact with hair and would never have left the store in a dirty manner. He backed his store and employees all the way and insisted that the woman was mistaken. Upon further investigation, one of the kitchen employees admitted that she had dropped a food item on the floor that night and didn't want to risk having the customer wait an extra 5 minutes to make a new one. Working in a bank, had a teller, about 19-year-old, get pissed about the way a customer, retail store owner, would send in her deposits at the drive-up window. The teller complained about the customer on Facebook, tagged the lady personally, as well as the store. Customer called the bank and told me. Furious, of course, I told the customer we would investigate. I asked the teller. She straight up admitted it, and says what's the customer or branch manager going to do about it? My grandfather is friends with the bank president. I called HR and bank president on conference. Girl lost her job in under 15 minutes of me receiving the call from the customer. Breach of customer confidentiality in banking is a major law violation. I managed the girl who was a loose cannon. She was an alcoholic who had multiple appointments every week, psych, physio, solicitors, all of it. She was constantly disappearing from work at random hours for like half a day, and as her drinking intensified she would show up stinking of booze. I'm a former alcoholic and the same age, so I tried my best with her. Anyway, she was on the long stretch towards getting performance managed, but she sped it up herself. We shared a building with the council and knew all of the staff, including the council rangers who patrolled the streets, give tickets, etc. One morning on her way to work she saw a street sign she wanted to take to give a friend. Cannot tell you why. She pulled a screwdriver from her bag. Why she had it, again, cannot say, and unscrewed it while standing on a milk crate in front of one of the rangers. She brought it into the office, told everyone, asked another staff member to hide it for her in case ranger came looking, then also put photos of it on Instagram with the office and company signage in the background. We had a meeting planned that day about her absenteeism and she told me because she thought it was a good laugh. Anyway, took a few days but she quit when HR started investigating. So I worked retail and we got this guy named something like Gus. My boss tells me, hey, this guy's got anxiety, go easy on him, okay? And so I was like, okay, that's cool, I get it, I can relate. I do everything I can to help him make sense of the infernal godforsaken hellscape that is retail. It starts off with little forgivable things, forgetting a task here, forgetting things there, accidentally giving the wrong info and things like that, you know, newbie retail stuff like that. He quickly devolved in popularity as his complacency grew over time and his helpful attitude shrank. My guy started fucking around during his shift, getting caught on his phone while ignoring backup cashier calls and things like that. He would make stabbing motions behind the manager's back to other employees, tell off new employees, and play it all off like he was some innocent dope who didn't know any better. None of this got him fired. Day after day was a new complaint from an employee about responsibilities he shirked, or a customer about blatantly wrong info like, oh yeah, we have another location up on the hill and we didn't. No idea whose son he was, because that was apparently all kosher. What actually got him fired is the one day he brought a dog and a super expensive dog collar into work. He claimed he almost hit the dog on the way to work and it was running around wild, etc. etc. He tried to sell the dog collar to a customer, then tried to adopt out the dog to a coworker. This coworker was competent enough to take the dog to a vet, whereupon they found the microchip and contacted the actual owners. That's where the fun started. It came out that Gus never found the dog at all. He straight up kidnapped this dog from his neighbor and tried to pawn it off. Knowing full well what he was doing, the guy fired up immediately, tried to sue Gus and threatened to sue the store and the store manager if Gus wasn't fired. Suffice to say, Gus was gone the very same evening. Nothing else came of it, but we talked about him for years and years. Early in my Navy career there was this kid whose after-hours stunts were absolutely legendary. A nice guy who always seemed to be smiling. The stories about his off-duty antics were just insane. Nothing criminal, just wild. It finally got to the point that his supervisor was concerned enough to refer him to mental health. This does not happen in the Navy. You will be hung out to dry or end up in jail long before anyone ever considers the mental health option. End result was that was the only guy I've ever known to be a medically diagnosed psychopath. They said I have an inability to experience human empathy. He had to go home. Reddit pointed out that his stunts were actually pretty blatantly criminal. Lol. I guess a better way to phrase it was that nothing he did ever seemed malicious. Guy might have been breaking the law, but I think he always made sure everyone involved was on board with it. Had a coworker who always had a really strong stench and thought it was just bad boo. Turns out, she was addicted to mothballs and was licking them during working hours. The chemicals give off an unbelievably strong smell through your skin. We got complaints about her odor but didn't take them seriously. Thought people were just being assholes, until someone saw her actively licking on the job. Edit. Wow, never thought I would see my comment at the top of this sub. I was leaving my job when this was discovered and sworn to secrecy because it's not the kind of thing we can advertise around the office. Thanks for letting me get it out there, Reddit. It's a good one. Something else I would add is it was the kind of smell where you could never really quite put the finger on what it was, but once we figured it out it made a lot of sense. It doesn't smell exactly like the real thing, but like it's been processed through your body, skin. Lol. We were also very wary of being discriminatory, which is why it wasn't discovered earlier. Used to work as a night auditor at a hotel, and one day I was told one of the daytime workers was fired. She was this really sweet older lady who worked part-time and it was really hard to get fired there, so I was very curious. Several customers had complained, concerned that there was something very off about this woman. She was slurring and just seemed very off that day. Management was concerned, at first thinking there was a medical issue. After a few more incidents, they checked the cameras and found out she was taking shots of vodka throughout her shift. Like, an absurd number of shots. I can't remember how much, but I remember being rather impressed that she could function at any capacity. Hired a guy on a trial basis. He was super polite and careful when speaking to me, but several of my female employees told me when I wasn't around he was creepy. After about 5 days, one came to me and said almost verbatim, "I think he's a rapist." She just had a gut feeling about him, so I ran a background check on him. Yep, he was a convicted rapist. Edited to ADD. For those of you saying this is why you run background checks before you hire, this was almost 20 years ago when it was not standard procedure, and I was not in charge of that regardless. HR would make the decision. In this case I requested it specifically because the safety of my employees appeared key. I've got a lot of these. Customer complained employee was stealing. Didn't believe it. At first thought the gayest man I've ever known was stealing Playboy magazines. No idea why. Got caught with them. Multiple copies of the same issue. Fired. One employee was spotted by a customer pleasuring himself on the roof before the store opened. Also used the magazine. Didn't believe it. Staked out the roof. Turned out to be true. Fired. One customer told me the bookkeeper is up to something because she didn't get a receipt for a space she rented. Didn't believe it. Turns out, this employee was pocketing a few hundred at a time when Evander paid in cash. Was doing all kinds of embezzling that wasn't easy to catch. Fired. Guiled. One customer walked in on an employee who was masturbating. There was a lock on the door. Lock not used. Fired. Customer spotted receipt showed coupon when they paid cash. Coupon code should have been cleared out of the system years before. It was 100% off coupon. This employee made an extra $100 or so per shift. Fired. Guiled. Mystery as to how they found the coupon code. One customer found a camera in the woman's restroom. I knew right away who it was. Staked out the camera feed until I saw him go in. Fired. Guile. One customer was hugged by an employee. No idea why. It was the employee's first day. Fired. One customer spotted a security guard selling meth to his friends. He had been selling meth and other drugs on his shift for over a year. Added bonus when we got rid of him. Thefts went way down. One customer complained an employee pointed and laughed when an old lady fell. Reviewed the tape. It was pretty pronounced. She had tripped on an end cap, fell, and wasn't able to get herself up. He was pointing and laughing for a while. When someone else helped her up, he was berated about doing nothing. Not fired, though. Had a new hire, as in less than a week on the job, at a movie theater, where I worked as a supervisor. Throw a very loud, unbelievably childish tantrum in front of a lobby full of customers because her direct supervisor asked her to sweep up some popcorn that a customer spilled. She kept screaming, "I ain't cleaning up someone else's mess. Make them, the customer, do it." She was 24 years old. The meltdown she had when she got fired for her tantrum was nuclear, with lots of screaming and threats of how her parents were going to call the company and get all your $8 fired. The next day someone claiming to be her dad did call and tell us that we are going to rehire my daughter and apologize to her and fire, named her supervisor and manager, or else, but nothing more came of it. The top manager just laughed and hung up. I've yet to ever see such an epic, entitled tantrum before or since. I worked at a cemetery and apparently a woman before my time was crooked as hell. The big thing that got her fired was when a child died and the family started paying on a marker. Now, those things are expensive and they got a nice one, so it took a while to pay it off. Various family members would come in to make payments from $50 to $2,000 for the parents, and this bitch took the money, wrote a fake contract, said the money was a down payment, and merely took the commission. It was found out when not only did people not pay on those false contracts, shocker, but the parents came in asking how much was left to pay after so-and-so put down a couple grand. They had to wait almost an extra year to get their little girl's marker put down. I work at a major retailer in Australia. Back in 2015, we got a tip from an anonymous customer that one of our managers was a pedophile and had groomed this customer's daughter years back. No one believed it at first, and the higher-ups did an investigation just as a formality. Turns out, TBs of child porn was found in his possession, including some photos that he had taken himself. After that we all had to undertake mandatory training on what to do if we suspect pedophilia in a coworker. Many years ago, the bookshop I worked at hired a new employee with terminal cancer. Very sad, since she was quite young. She wasn't around too much due to the chemotherapy etc., but when she wasn't, she worked in the children's department. She was actually a pretty good children's bookseller, and was a huge fan of a fairly major American children's author. She ran the UK branch of his fan club and knew him personally. He occasionally flew her out to the States for events. One day, she wasn't in, and all employees were called to a staff meeting. We were informed that she had passed away. There was a lot of sadness. Her close colleagues were devastated. Only A few days later, one of our staff happened to go into a branch of McDonald's in a nearby town. Guess who was working behind the counter? Go on, guess. Turns out, she was never ill. She had made the whole cancer thing up, as well as faking her own death, for reasons that we never really fully understood. The general consensus was that it started out as a way to connect with her author hero and kind of spiraled from there. In the end, she couldn't handle living the lie anymore, and so just up and had her mother tell people that she died, and then got a job in McD's a few miles down the road, and was surprised when she got found out. That was a pretty what the fuck sort of experience for us all. HR had got a call from a sex chat administrator, informing our official account is unpaid. They will take legal action if we don't pay immediately. I thought it was a joke. Anyways, we did get a legal notice. Then legal and HR investigated. The sex chat company sent a phone call copy. As soon as I played it, my HR lady screamed, "I know this guy, he works in supply chain." Later on, we realized we had an employee who used to make phone sex chat calls using our company landline. We politely told him to pay up and settle the matter, then issued a final warning letter. I just fired an intern because he thought it'd be funny to smack one of the girls on the ass. Upon further investigation, she had been having anxiety coming to work because he would ask all sorts of ridiculously inappropriate questions. For example, he asked her if she had a good weekend. She told him it was a good weekend or some plain answer, and he then asked her if it was because she fucked her boyfriend a lot. Needless to say, her anxiety was warranted and we fired him as soon as we could. The mood in my group seems a bit more relaxed this week. That the guy was stalking a female employee. It was a 24-hour retailer and she was a morning shifter and he was night shift, so I just thought there was no way they knew each other. Then one day I was filling in for a different manager and he came into the break room and was taking pictures of the morning shift schedule. I asked him why and he told me some story about another employee just wanted him to send their schedule, etc. I came in on my day off later that week during day shifter and caught him staring at her from a different aisle while she was stalking. She had no idea he would follow her home and watch her house and all that. She was 17, he was 38. I called the cops and had him escorted off the property and helped her get in touch with the right resources for a restraining order. He ended up violating the order multiple times and is in jail last I heard. Had a supervisor did that at one of my old jobs a long-ass time ago. I was working in a snack bar at a local Target and we'd gone through a handful of employees who just didn't work out for whatever reason. Then they hired this guy, I'll call him Red because he had reddish hair and I can't remember his name anyway, to be a supervisor. He was probably late 20s, early 30s, somewhere around there. He was an asshole. Dirk. All the department leads at Target had walkie-talkies and headsets. Red had neither, and neither did our lead supervisor. I don't think, because we just didn't need them in the snack bar. Red, however, insisted that we did and threw a fit to multiple department leads, including the customer service lead, about it. Because of the store's location, we often had construction workers come in to grab a quick breakfast. One of the construction workers who came in regularly for about 2-3 weeks was a lady, and Red decided to try and hit on her. When she told him she was married, he upped the ante. One day, she came in and before she could even walk up to the counter, he reached out and grabbed her hand and tried to pull her towards him. Dirk. The next day her husband, who was several inches taller, heavier and muscular than Red, came in and told him to leave his wife alone or he was gonna get it. Another time, Red started hitting on one of the pharmacists. She didn't want anything to do with him, so he followed her out to her car. When she locked the door and told him to get lost, he walked to the back of the car and started pushing up and down on the bumper, which freaked her the fuck out and she called the cops on his ass. The absolute last straw was his doing a no-call no-show. I'd left a note for our lead supervisor about his no-call no-show and Red became absolutely furious at me, like, screaming in my face, threatening to hit me. That got him fired. Why his other creepy-ass behavior didn't, IDK. I knew a guy who worked at Subway back when they gave out stamps. Basically for every 6 inches of sub you bought you earned a stamp, and once you filled a card with 8 stamps you could get a free 6-inch sub. So this guy started only giving stamps to customers who asked for them. If they didn't ask he pocketed their stamps and grew a sizable stack of complete stamp cards. Then over time he started cashing them in. When a customer paid with cash he would ring it in as a freebie, place his own completed stamp card in the till, and pocket the cash. Customer got their sub. Subway's till was balanced, and he had an extra $5 to $10 in his pocket. Everybody was happy. He worked there for a few years and word was he racked up a few $1,000s running the scheme. No idea if anybody complained, or if he was ever caught, but he did buy a motorbike.